I go through phases. Sometimes I want cozy games, sometimes I want cyberpunk sci-fi stuff, sometimes I want old relaxing fantastical journeys with like elves or whatever, and sometimes I don't. Sometimes I want some edge in my life. Sometimes I want to break stuff. Sometimes I need metal. The heavy metal kind of metal. I want to go around throwing up the horns, hanging out with barbarians, punching werewolves, kicking demons, making out with giant swords. The kind of stuff that makes you want to climb a mountain during a thunderstorm and challenge a dragon to a guitar duel. I've been rocking out and mashing buttons so much recently that it got me wondering, what are the most metal retro games ever made? The kind of games that look like they were airbrushed onto the side of a van in 1988. So I forged a mighty list of the 10 most metal retro games ever made, and then I folded it 1,000 times in the fires of Mount Death, hammered it upon an ancient dwarven anvil, and then accidentally stapled my thumb to it. And as my blood seeped into the parchment, it awoke an ancient being, whose terrible roar split the heavens, shattered the mountains, and echoed across the ages. And as it dragged me into the underworld, I reached out and my fingers found the weapon that I would use to slay the beast. My TrimUI brick hammer, a retro handheld artifact of unimaginable metal power, because it's metal. It's literally made of metal. Crafted in the fires of creation itself, passed down through the ages from one great hero to the next. And as it fell from the heavens in a rain of fire and ash and brimstone, it landed here on my desk so I could make this video for you. And if that's not destiny, then shut up. It is. It obviously is. That's literally the entire point of the story I just told. As the darkness consumed me and I fell into the underworld, the air grew cold. Strange whispers echoed through the darkness. I could smell the ancient evil stirring beneath my feet. Then I walked directly into a spike trap and died instantly, which is actually a pretty accurate introduction to the Immortal. The Immortal is an isometric fantasy adventure game that made its way from computers to the consoles. I'm playing the Sega Genesis version. You play as a wizard descending through a monster-filled labyrinth in search of someone. Along the way, you're going to battle skeletons and goblins, solve puzzles, discover magical treasures, and die a lot in all sorts of horrible ways. And that's really what makes the Immortal so memorable. In a bad way, but also kind of a good way. You have to be a bit of a masochist to enjoy this, and we all know that metalheads love a bit of pain. This game is absolutely ruthless. One wrong move can leave your wizard crushed, impaled, or otherwise removed from existence in gruesome ways. But beyond the brutality, it's also incredibly atmospheric. It has a super flavorful dark fantasy vibe that feels like the kind of deadly story that would be told in the form of a poem, voiced over an epic guitar solo. Most fantasy games make you feel like a hero. The Immortal makes you feel like a wizard who is wildly underqualified for the situation. As somebody who once injured himself opening a bag of chips, I found that very relatable. After somehow surviving the deadly labyrinths of the Immortal, I continued my descent. Eventually, I arrived at the throne room of the Dark Lord himself. And then 4 heavily armed adventurers burst through the door and beat him to death right in front of me. Dark Seal is a fantasy adventure arcade RPG. At a glance, it actually looks kind of like the Immortal, but it's completely different. You'll actually feel like a hero playing this one. You choose between a fighter, wizard, dwarf, or thief, and battle your way through hordes of monsters in a quest to defeat the evil Dark Lord. It's essentially a top-down hack-and-slash adventure, but one with an incredible amount of personality. Everything about Dark Seal feels like it was ripped straight from the cover of a fantasy novel that someone swiped from the back of a van at a heavy metal concert, which is how I got most of my fantasy novels. The world is packed with skeletons, demons, giant monsters, dark castles, and enough evil magic to keep an entire kingdom of wizards employed for generations. Best of all, it's just plain fun. And it's got great arcade addictive energy that keeps you shoveling in quarters. I mean, it would if I wasn't playing on my TrimUI brick. Like a coward. While exploring the underworld, I came across a chamber guarded by ancient demons. At its center sat a legendary relic of unimaginable power. For reasons that nobody could adequately explain, it was a pinball machine. Devil's Crush is my favorite TurboGrafx 16 game, and this isn't some cheerful arcade table covered in balloons and smiling clowns or whatever. Actually, that would probably be terrifying too. This thing looks like it was designed by a biker tattoo artist who got trapped inside a pinball factory and had to art his way out, whatever that means. The centerpiece is a giant demonic face. There are dragons, skulls, monsters, eyeballs, and the best part is that it's actually fantastic. I freaking love this game. The table is packed with secrets, transformations, bonus stages, boss fights, and objectives that keep things interesting long after you memorize where the, flippers are. Most pinball games make me feel like a guy standing at a table in an arcade. Devil's Crush makes me feel like a barbarian warrior battling the forces of darkness with a tiny metal ball of destiny. At one point during my journey through the underworld, I came across an ancient stone tablet. Upon it was carved a sacred message from the gods themselves: rise from your grave. And that's when I knew I was about to play Altered Beast. The setup is simple. Zeus himself resurrects a fallen warrior and sends him on a quest to retrieve his daughter from the clutches of an evil god. Along the way, you'll punch zombies, punch monsters, and collect power-ups that give you increasingly ridiculous supernatural beast-punching powers. And by ridiculous, I mean awesome. Everything is turned up to 11, and that line actually works here in this script because it's from Spinal Tap, and this is a video about metal games, so, This time, it fits. It's all over the top in this game. The graveyards, the monsters, and especially the transformations. Here, you don't just get stronger, you get to become a giant werewolf, and then later a dragon and a bear, and other horrifying creatures that look like they escaped from a wizard's scary bedtime story. The gameplay itself is a super simple, straightforward beat 'em up, but that's not really why people remember Altered Beast. People remember it because a giant floating wolf head appears and shouts things at you while your muscles grow 3 sizes larger. A short time later, I found a great stone monument in the underworld depicting the 4 pillars of heavy metal: barbarians, dragons, axes, and more barbarians. And I knew I had arrived at Golden Axe. This is a whole series of arcade games, but the first is a great place to start. You choose from 3 warriors, set out to defeat the evil Death Adder, and spend the rest of the game hacking and slashing your way through armies of monsters, skeletons, and assorted fantasy troublemakers. This is a world where evil is evil, heroes are heroes, and problems are best solved with an axe to the face. That's the kind of straightforward simplicity that I need in my metal music and my metal retro games. It comes together to create just like a very memorable fantasy experience. Everyone knows and loves Golden Axe, and that's for good reason. Some games try very hard to be metal. Golden Axe doesn't try at all. It just casually shows up carrying a battle axe and riding a dragon and lets everyone else figure it out. At this point in my journey through the underworld, I had seen demons, dark gods, ancient monsters, and enough skeletons to fill several medium-sized skeleton storage units. Then I found Wolfchild, and suddenly my entire journey made sense, and I knew that I had to make this video. Because if I had to pick the single most metal game on this list, it would be Wolfchild. I fired this up recently and I thought to myself, I bet it would be fun to make a video about the most metal retro games. And then I did, if you can believe that. Wolfchild is a run-and-gun action game where a scientist's son sets out to rescue his kidnapped father or something. The twist here is that you can transform into a wolf man with giant claws and enough attitude to power an entire heavy metal festival. This game feels like it was created by a 12-year-old who had just discovered both heavy metal music and werewolves and thought that they were the coolest things in the universe. And honestly, that 12-year-old was right. Wolfchild isn't the best game on this list. It's good, but it's not a masterpiece. It isn't the most famous or whatever, but when I think most metal retro game ever made, this is the first thing that comes to my mind. My journey in the darkness led me to a massive stone statue depicting an ancient hero. He stood atop a mountain of defeated monsters, wielding a sword roughly the size of a canoe. I assumed it was symbolic, and then I found Rastan and realized that it was actually 100% accurate. Rastan is a side-scrolling action arcade game starring a barbarian warrior on a quest through a world filled with monsters, dragons, demons, and other things that need to be hit with an enormous sword. Because Rastan doesn't need to tell an intricate fantasy epic. Rastan just needs to look awesome. And it does. It succeeds. Rastan himself looks like he was carved from a mountain. His sword is absurdly huge. The enemies are bizarre and intimidating. Just looking at a screenshot or some gameplay for like 2 seconds tells you exactly what you're getting. You're a barbarian, there's monsters, go solve the monster problem, preferably with the giant sword. Soon in my journey through the underworld, I came upon a dark fortress carved into the side of a mountain. Its halls were filled with monsters, chains, prisons, and enough skulls to make a necromancer say, "Oh, okay, that's probably enough skulls." And standing in the middle of it all was a guy with a shotgun, and his name was Blackthorne. This is a Super Nintendo game, a cinematic platformer from Blizzard, back before they became whatever they are now. You play as Kyle Blackthorne, a warrior returning to his homeland to overthrow the evil ruler who conquered it years ago. To do that, you'll maneuver or blast your way through levels full of orcs, monsters, and did I mention that you have one of the coolest shotguns in retro gaming? No? Okay, well, I will then. You have one of the coolest shotguns in retro gaming. And this game is like brimming with metal attitude. The long hair, the constant brooding, the way Blackthorne casually leans against walls while he's blasting bad guys. Everything about this guy screams, "I definitely listen to a genre of music that's too intense for most people." It's tough as most cinematic platformers are, and it takes some time to get used to it, but it feels great when it clicks. Combat feels deliberate, the animations are smooth, and the world is packed with atmosphere. Most heroes fight evil with enchanted swords and holy magic. Blackthorne showed up with a frickin' shotgun and a bad attitude like Ash from Army of Darkness. I found Stormlord completely by accident. One minute I was wandering through the underworld, the next I had stepped through a glowing portal and I found myself in a strange realm filled with gargoyles, ruined castles, twisted creatures, and tiny fairies that seemed determined to make my life difficult, which as it turns out is pretty much Stormlord. This game was originally for home computers like the Commodore 64 and Amiga, but I'm playing the Genesis port here. Actually, now that I'm looking, like 85.7% of the stuff on this list is from the Sega Genesis. I think it's probably safe to say, based on this, that the Sega Genesis is the most metal console. Let me know if you agree or disagree in the comments below. Stormlord is a fantasy action platformer. You play as a powerful warrior tasked with restoring balance to a dark and corrupted land by rescuing fairies and battling the forces of evil. It feels less like you're playing through a fantasy world and more like you've, wandered into a dream. Being dreamed by a fantasy nerd, so like familiar but weird. Stormlord isn't metal because of giant muscles or oversized swords. Here, it's the mood. It's not in-your-face metal, it's more like mysterious gothic fantasy metal. Most games on this list want to run up to you and slash you apart with their claws and punch you in the face or whatever. Stormlord just stares at you from across the room, and somehow that's even weirder. And that's probably why I have such a problem at social gatherings, now that I think about it. As my journey through the underworld drew to a close, I found 3 heroes preparing for war. One carried a sword, one carried an axe, one carried powerful magic. And suddenly, I knew I was almost home. I knew these guys, my old friends, the heroes of Blades of Vengeance. I've shown this game off many times on my channel, but it is so fitting for a video like this that it just had to make the list. In this one, you choose between 3 heroes and then you battle your way through a world overrun by demonic forces. Each character has their own abilities and playstyle, but they all share one thing in common. They are here to ruin a lot of monsters' days. And that makes this one of the most unapologetically metal games. Every level is just full of lava, demons, dark magic, giant monsters, and tons of environmental hazards that want you dead even more than the zombies. Blades of Vengeance isn't subtle. It doesn't want to be. It just hands you a weapon, points you towards the forces of darkness, and gets out of the way. It's one of my favorite retro games, and I'll always jump at a chance to shoehorn it into a gameless video, but here, in a best metal retro games video, I don't even need to try. It belongs here. And so, with the ancient beast defeated and my quest complete, I climbed from the depths of the underworld and returned to the Dweeb cave. Wiser, stronger, and smelling faintly of demon guts. And if this journey taught me anything, it's that true heroes never really retire. They roam the land forever, seeking adventure wherever it may be found. Battling monsters, defeating dark lords, rescuing kingdoms, and occasionally sitting on the couch in pajama pants playing Genesis games on my TrimUI brick hammer while eating dry cereal from a coffee mug. The path of a hero takes many forms. Now, I know that there's a whole bunch of wonderfully metal retro games that I didn't put in this list, so you tell me in the comments what games you think deserve a place in the Hall of Metal. I bet you got some bangers to suggest. And by bangers, I mean headbangers. And by headbangers, I mean video games that are good. But that's all from me for today. Throw up the horns, keep your battle axe sharp, and may your skeletons remain thoroughly smashed.